Welcome back, listeners. It's so great to be with you here today again. And it is such a treat because I've got our Rihanna with us again. And it is so special because she has brought us a special, special guest today. Rihanna, can you tell us who you've brought for us today?
You bet, Ashley. I'm really glad to be here today, too. I'm having so much fun all these weeks that we're getting to be together here. Our guest today is the Reverend Robert Daniel Arnaud. Rob and I met really early in the pandemic when we were chaplain interns serving the San Francisco night ministry together. Rob is a queer, neurodivergent spiritual director, coach, and minister based in Massachusetts. He's raised in the Bronx by his badass Puerto Rican abuela and New Yorkian mom. He's a survivor of conversion therapy and offers trauma informed spiritual direction and coaching for the LGBTQIA plus and or BIPOC Latine folks who are also healing from religious trauma. Rob is ordained through the Metropolitan Community Churches and serves as a minister with the Faith Community in Atlanta, Georgia. His path is anything but traditional. Aside from having a foundation in non-Christian nationalist Christianity, Rob is also a secular Buddhist, a Reiki practitioner, a tarot card dabbler, and an ecumenical mystic who believes in the divinity of bodies, stories, and a chosen family. His ministry, radical love. He's also the author of Sabor Zen, a pocket prayer book inspired by Buddhist precepts and flavored with cultural soul, a gentle but grounded invitation into mindful living and embodied presence. Rob blends trauma informed care, spiritual liberation, and real talk into one wildly sacred path. Rob, I'm so inspired by you because the heart of your work seems to be about healing and connection. I'm just thrilled to have you here. It's such a treat to get to see you and hear you today, and welcome to Connection from here.
Oh, Rihanna, thank you so much. First of all, it's all great to see you again and to interact with you in this way. And thank you, Ashley and Michelle, for doing this. Rihanna asked me if I was interested. I was like, yeah, let's do this. I started like doing a binge diving into your podcast and all the good, like delicious gems that have come out of that. I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have fun with this. It's gonna be great. So thank you. Thank you for the work that you do and the invitation.
Oh, what a pleasure it is to have you, Rob. I've been looking so forward to this day. Yours is such a special, special story that has meant
Mm.
so much to me already, and I know is going to mean so much to the listeners.
More people than ever are stepping away from organized religion. So where do we turn for support, meaning, and connection? Hi friends, and welcome to Connection from Here, finding community in a changing world. I'm Michelle Perry.
And I'm Ashley Beatty Perry.
We're so happy you're here.
I would like to kind of start off asking you about your experience of community in like your childhood years. And maybe that means the lack of community, however that means for you. What was your experience around community in your early growing up years?
Community for me was very centered around the church. I grew up very much in the depths of the Pentecostal church. Growing up in the Bronx, my grandmother was the one that raised me with my mom. My mom was a teen mom, and their journey, they were able to find this church that was deeply rooted in what we'd say very conservative, fundamental beliefs. So when I was born, they were in it. They were in it. My grandmother was a musician and she played the guitar for church. She was like music ministry. My mother and my aunt were singers, and so they would sing. And then I was involved in anything artistic. So I would say that point in my life was filled with warm memories and a feeling of a family that was looking out for you. But I want to caveat it by saying those are memories through the lens of a child. Like these are memories that I hold in looking at this community as a child. As I grew more in understanding and then finding out that I was queer, definitely, but didn't have the language for it, I still felt that support from the community. But I also learned that there was some rhetoric that wasn't really supportive. of even things within my family that were going on. It's kind of it's a mixed feeling that I get.
Rob, in so much of what you're already speaking about, it resonates, I think, with the experience of so many of us to have that. We've talked before
Mm.
about here's your context of community, but are you able to bring your whole self, be your whole authentic self in that community, in a real community? Feeling would need to hold that for you as well, the ability to be your authentic self. Can you say more about for you in that journey? Did it at some point turn for you as you became to know your story in your experience and began to put some language around it for yourself? How did that translate then? Were you still part of that community as you were beginning to understand more yourself?
The reason why I say I had to be part of the community was because my grandmother was still involved in the church, and stepping out of that community meant a disconnection from anything and any support that you've ever understood. So I firsthand saw the effects of other people who would leave the church and how they were viewed as, to the point of, and I trigger warning, there's a lot of stuff that's going to be mentioned. They were told to be demonic and that those were demons placed here to lead the chosen ones, quote unquote, astray. And so we just emotionally and psychologically could not afford to disconnect at that time. We did and felt the backlash. But even when my aunt was the first one to leave the church, then it was my mom. I stood behind still. I wasn't abandoned by anyone. It was my mom stopped going. But I had this fear that if I stopped going, not only would I be judged by this community, but I'd be judged by God themselves. And so I was like, I need to still hang on, because there's a saying in my family. At the time, we'd say, Alabad yo y será salvo yo y mi casa. I will praise the Lord, and me and my house will be saved. So I had it embedded in me that if they wanted to leave, I needed to be the one to bring, quote unquote, salvation to our family in a way that could allow us to pass through the gates, so to speak.
Wow.
I
Yeah, Rihanna, I saw you
yeah,
nodding your head.
yeah, I just first of all, thank you for doing the trigger warning. And here when I say it pains me to know that you had to go through that. And it pains me for any of our listeners that are going through that. And I think this is a really sensitive topic about what we're talking about here in how we seek connection and the ways that our heart longs to feel connected can be manipulated. And you even named the bifurcation of looking at it from a child's lens. And I wanted to say something about that because it's when you become an adult that your lens changes and you get to look back and be like, oh, all that warmth and community I
Mhm.
felt was actually not safe for me. And you're touching on something that is such master manipulation. And I know you're going to say more, but I don't know what the essence is of what I really want to say, except that the heart longs for connection. And it's just so awful when it is met through something that is so terrorizing in the end.
Rihanna, and I so appreciate you bringing that up about Rob's story because that is biological within us. We need connection. Like you said, we long for it. We need it. Early people, you weren't going to survive if you were out by yourself and the wild animal comes. So there's something to be separated from what you think is community. It can be a feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to survive this. To be separated from community means there's not survival for me. So, Rob, I so appreciate you highlighting that because I think your story is so common. And I would say daily, I'm hearing stories so similar to yours. So for you to bring your story so we all can talk about it, it feels so important. Thank you.
Thank you for this platform to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. As that journey went on for you, And family members were already stepping away from what no longer served them, but there you were, still in that toxic kind of environment, but still you called it community for you. Can you continue to tell us about what that process was as you worked through your own journey with that?
Yeah. And this is the part where I am going to mention a lot of trauma when it comes to conversion therapy, just so the listeners know. As I attended church with my grandmother, there were also, I was going with the flow, but I slowly felt like I was just being an outlier. And so I stopped going as frequent. And then in 1992, my grandmother passed away, which was a huge gap that was in my family because I was the only child still living with their grandparent and my mom. And so my mother had remarried, and that marriage was a difficult childhood to begin with my step parent. But there was always that escape that I had with my grandmother, and now I didn't have it. So not only was it missing her, I was also now the link to the church was gone. The link to my biological family is gone because everybody went to my grandmother's house for the holidays and to visit. And that's when the tension between my immediate family started to like frame. Most of us could probably relate to this. We have huge families sometimes, but there's also like that small group that you kind of grow up with, like those particular cousins, that particular aunt because of proximity or whatnot. I had that aunt and those cousins, and because of internal family struggles and things like that, when my grandmother passed, everything was gone. So I was a child without a faith community, a child without my core biological family, in a new environment because we had to move out with my mom sharing her time with basically someone that I didn't grow with a stranger. So everything was wild. So for a while, just going through that I was trying to find chosen family, trying to find those. I think I went through that. I think I stopped going when I was 15 to church. And by 19 is when I finally accepted that I was gay. I came out to myself. But that also started the whole I need to change this because this is not going to end well. And so in my revisiting of the church visits, it was to first get back that community that I lost, but also I need some resources. I need to know like where do I go? What do I do?
Yeah.
And so when that self searching didn't work, I finally it took me like 2 years to really like start telling people that I was, and at the time, language is so important. At the time, it wasn't I'm gay. It was I'm struggling with same sex attraction. So it's not an identity. Now it's a challenge. And so I went to a pastor, and the pastor recommended me to go to this group. It was first a group out in New York City, and I won't mention the name, but it was associated with kind of a larger movement that in the conversion therapy world is a very well known movement that is no longer present. But I went through that process for about a year and a half. And it was, hmm, it was so confusing because on one hand, I was taught by strong women in my family to really stand firm in what you believe in, to be independent, to do things for yourself. I mean, my grandmother was like a firecracker. She was like devoted to her faith, but also would start an argument with anybody if you mess with her kids type of thing. So I had that. But then on the other hand, I had this rhetoric of I cannot claim an identity because this body, this form is tainted, it's sinful. Right. And so I have to be covered by another identity, which in my community at the time was called the blood of Jesus. I have to be covered by the blood of Jesus so that God can find favor in me as an individual. And later on, I'm like, wow, God can't love me unless I'm cloaked with someone else's face. So it's not even me. So I'm like, all right, well, this is not my identity to claim. So I went to that a year and a half, came out of there angry because it wasn't changed. Came out angry. And I turned my back away from anything. I turned my back from a God, an other outside of me. And I engaged in a lot of risky, dangerous behavior that I don't even know how I was protected or got through that. And it was because internally I was saying, man, I'm a good Christian boy. Never gave my mom and my grandmother issues in school. I was getting bullied in school, but never started trouble. I went to church practically every single day, volunteered for all these dramas and special activities, and never gave anyone problems. And here I am being punished, quote unquote, with this challenge. And I want to give it up. And I cried and everything. And God is still not listening to me. Well, middle finger to them and everybody else, and I'm going to live my life the way I want to live it. But that translated into dangerous stuff.
You know,
Mhm.
Rihanna, in hearing what Rob is saying, I'm just going back to what you mentioned earlier. Our deep, deep need for community. Here's a young man with a deep need for community, but here's the community that's offered to you. You've got to essentially, as you were saying, not even be who you are to have some sort of system in place that, is to make you feel like you're not alone in the world. You cannot be anything of who you are.
Yeah, I hear where you're bringing this, Ashley, and I think it's so essential. We've talked about in the previous episodes, like how to be, like, where can you show up as authentically you? But Rob is lifting into the conversation another piece that we haven't really touched on yet about identity. And it's synonymous with being your authentic self, but it's more than that. It's really specific. And when I heard you say, now it wasn't an identity, it was a challenge, right? Like your identity wasn't that you were gay. Your identity was, or that your problem was this challenge you had about feelings towards same sex. And so that's just a really important piece to look at. And I see you as someone who has also, like, you've been a teacher of mine as we're all learning in this world how to name your social location, how to name the things that you
Mhm.
identify with, and how to recognize and love that diversity in each other. I know you can elaborate more as you keep telling your story, but that search for community that reflects our truest sense of identity is huge, right?
Yeah.
And Rob, because what I'm here, like as a young man, here you are working through this process. It came to the point where you're like, well, if this is what community has to be, forget it. There is nothing for me here. I cannot be myself here. So if this is what community has to look like, here I am. I will just make my way by myself. Is that where does that seem like where you were finding yourself now as you entered into the young adult stage?
Oh, definitely. Because of the fact that I was never taught to have my own identity, I had to seek out community that others thought I needed to seek out in order to fulfill an identity that others thought I needed to fulfill. So the people in my community, I was just mirroring what they wanted me to be. So when you go through your life attributing your own identity to a community, to another source outside of yourself, when you lose all that, you don't have anything. So I am back to square one with not knowing who I am. So what do? I need to find community, but I can't do it in the church or my family or my cultural community. So I found it in my LGBTQ plus community, but not in the healthy activism chosen family way. I could only base it on what others taught me, the behavior of the gay community, the stereotype and the biased thinking that gay men are all about having sex, nothing to have any kind of faith. They're all about themselves, clubbing, going, all these things and materialistic things. So I said, well, I can't talk to anybody because I don't have any gay friends. I need to make them. So let me zip up and put up another identity and go find my community. And that's started me going out to clubs and doing this and drinking and having like being very promiscuous but very risky. And I think and at some point I was going to therapy because I was like, this ain't working. After the conversion therapy didn't work, and I started just living life on my own terms, my skewed own terms. I was like, let me go to therapy. Let me see what this is about. And within that therapy, that's when it's really started to hit the fan. You know what I mean? Because it was now digging inside and pulling out my true self. And it hurt because for about, at the time, 28 years, who I was at the time was so bottled up and stitched up and bricked up behind a wall that to awaken that part, I was like, where do you even start? I don't even want to show up because the thing about my process, my journey was, there's a great book that I read, which is like the pioneer of trauma is The Body Keeps the Score. And the body does hold the memories and emotions even before we even have the language to name it. And it was still something that needed to be resurrected, you know. And so as I was going to therapy for something completely different, it was like I was having problems at work. And then my faith journey came up, and my therapist, who I think she would identify herself as really not a believer, but she said, why don't you try this church out? It's called MCC New York, and they have a queer congregation. So, Act 5, enter in the stage, internal homophobia. My internal homophobia said, I do not want to go to a gay church because why do I have to go to gay church? I just want to go to regular church. Why do I have to find that there? I'm literally being given my community. And still, I am just like, I don't want to be part of it because of that rhetoric. Like, being gay is wrong. I said no many times. And then at the time, I had sort of like a psychological snap, a nervous breakdown, breakthrough, I sometimes say, because the abuse that my stepfather had, that experience with my stepfather at the time when I was a child, had dissipated. I calmed down, but then it started to kind of re-emerge, more psychological emotion abuse. And I was like, no, not again. And so that breakdown resulted in I have scars on my arms, and I had really done a damage to tendons and ligaments. And I remember being in the hospital, like bandaged up, under psychological care and all that good stuff. And I said to myself, I'm not going to be able to play the guitar anymore. I'm not going to be able to worship anymore. And even beyond this whole everything that was going on, music has always been so important in my family, especially worship music. there's this sense of, as messed up as I think some of the theology behind some of these songs are, because my body keeps the score, when I listen to the songs, it brings a sense of warmth and comfort because it reminds me of the good times. So I just learned to just love the melody and the music and the memories at the time and not necessarily listen to the lyrics. And so to not be able to play the guitar anymore, I was like, I can't do that anymore. What's going on? The doctors were like, if you have use of your arms again, it's very low percentage because I had really done a number on the tendons and everything, the ligament. And so I remember saying the first time that I prayed after all that time, I said, listen, if you're up there, I don't know if you are, but please save my arms. And if you do, I'll do something, but I don't know what it is to do. And long story short, they healed and I have full control of my arms. I sometimes get crampy because I'm missing some muscle. But that's when I started to really say, okay, let me go to this freaking church, this church that they're saying, this queer church. And so I went and visited this small church in Manhattan. And I remember sitting in the back, and it was kind of like a screw you, a message to my former faith community because my pastor would always tell people, sit up in the front because the devil sits in the back of the church. So it was kind of me saying, well, if y'all think I'm the devil anyway, let me just be back here anyway. And I sat there. It was the last straw. I was like, I have nothing else to prove. I've tried all these other religions and faith practices and nothing really stuck. All these churches and they always hate me. You saved my arms for some reason. I don't know what, because everything's still crappy. If I am to be here in this church to grow, then you got to give me a sign. And it's not like that still small voice that people say. I don't want it to be a whisper. I need it to be obvious because I am on the autism spectrum and ADHD and I miss social cues. So if you want me to believe that it's you because it's a small whisper, I'm just going to think it's me talking to myself. And here I am, like negotiating. And I remember as I said that, the choir from the church got up, and this is a mostly white congregation. And the music starts, and it's that cheesy wannabe Spanish cha-cha music that sounds like that automatic music when you get on those keyboards, like the keyboards and everything. And they started singing this song. Now, from everybody that has grown up in church, we always have those songs that we learn as children, those simple songs like Jesus loves me, yes, I know, one of those things. And the choir, there was not one person that was Latino in there, started singing this childhood song that I would sing in my church that I grew up. And it was the Spanish version of David dancing, right? That song. I will dance like David dance. And I'm looking up and I go, you gotta be freaking kidding me. And they're singing in the most horrible Spanish accent, but it's like flowers and a fragrance of joy. And I immediately started bawling because I guess internally, as I prayed, I also was like, I give up. I'm not going to try to change me. I give up. I was like, I just want to be happy and I wanted to know what is this in my life. And it was almost as if this other power, this higher power was saying, I'm going to give you that clue. I'm going to give you that sign and it's going to be obvious because you've given it up. You don't need to change anything, and kind of like a welcome home. And not only is it going to be a song in your native tongue, but it's going to be a song that you learned growing up in that church because I want you to grow here. Yeah, I did the ugly cry. And then I said, okay, well, I need to know who you are to me. I don't want to be a facsimile of anyone else. I don't want to regurgitate all this beautiful sermon like statements. I want to know that when and if I decide to raise my hands and worship, that it's me that wants to do it and not because I want to be like someone else. And that's what started my journey.
Oh,
Wow.
Rob, oh, what a gift. So much of your journey that it just is so powerful and I think is playing out again and again and again for so many people that have been traumatized from various religious organizations. And then I want to just highlight so much is that it's somehow in finding yourself and coming into all of you that you were doing that in therapy because I heard you were already working on that in therapy, but something about finding yourself in this new community is where the whole of you now you were safe. Now you were safe. And so the work that you had been, there you were going by yourself to therapy, trying to figure out what all this has meant. What do I do with this trauma? There's something so powerful about here was a community that kind of caused the trauma to start with. But then somehow, when healing was finally found, it was in this context of a different type of community that could hold the whole authentic you. Brianna, I'm going to bring you in here because you and I have talked a good bit about this, is what community can do to harm us, as you mentioned earlier.
Mhm.
And then here is Rob finding healing in a community that does community differently.
That's right. When I think back to your first episode, talking about people in this country having moved away from religion. And so, where are we seeking connection? And for a number of us that you've spoken with, Ashley and Michelle, too, a lot of us have healed the religious trauma we experienced and found the places of spiritual connection that are a part of our identity that we knew we wanted from an early age, whether it's from a Buddhist temple or a Unitarian Universalist church or an MCC church. It's really powerful when your identity no longer has to be a projection of what other people want it to be, and it gets to be who you are. And then you get to return to a place of worship or a place of spiritual connection where you find safety again. And Rob, your story, I mean, I just want to thank you for the vulnerability you've offered here and your willingness to share it, because I know, unfortunately, it's pretty common for folks. And I really hope that the intention of this podcast is that listeners can hear something of their story reflected back and know that they're not alone in what they've been through. It's just a real gift to be able to have these conversations and talk about the dark stuff and the painful stuff of our lives. It does come into the healing, and our bodies can, oh, how do I want to say this? Like they've kept the score, but now they can maybe like let go of keeping score. I'm at a loss for words, really, Rob, but I'm so grateful for you sharing.
Rob, here you are in a community that values you as an individual, values all of you. You matter here. You belong here. Every bit of you matters and belongs here. As Rihanna was saying, it was going to take a community to heal what had been a harmful community. I mean, I'm just so drawn to the story that your therapist says, I think you need community. I think community can bring some heal. Did you realize that piece of community going in, or were you just like, okay, therapist says try it, I'm just going to give it a go?
That's a very good question, because therapy was also not seen as a positive thing in my family and in my culture. We didn't need therapy. All we needed to was pray more or go to church more, read our Bibles more. So for me to go to therapy was already something that was going against the grain of everything that I was taught. I think what made me, or kind of pushed me to go and visit this church and get into this community, was me saying, it can't get any worse. Might as well. If I don't like it, I'm still left with this stuff. But I think that what happened was there was a new challenge, a new cognitive dissonance in my head, because there can possibly I cannot possibly like this community. I was groomed to hate this community. So then the echoes of the indoctrination come. Is this a ploy from the enemy to deceive me and lead me astray? Am I here to go in? It got even to this point. Am I here? Am I placed into this community so that I can bring these people back to God? Can you believe that? Like, teach them that of their ways and get them back. But that's something that even though it was echo, I was fighting against it because I had at least the strength at the time to say, you need to shut up, voice, because you're the reason that you're the why you got me in here in the first place. So I was flying blindly. I was flying with no aim and without any navigation. All that I needed to do was just continue and see how it happened. I always use this. I'm a very visual person, and either I reference movies, cartoons, or toys. And my entire journey, and even continues to now, because I absolutely don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing it. Is that there's this game that I used to have. It was a box, a wooden box, and on the top, it was a panel that kind of moved back and forth. It went up and down like a seesaw. And in the inside the box that was like completely boxed in, or well, it was hollow. And so that pivoting level had a bunch of holes in it. And the aim of the game was there was a metal ball that you had to navigate on this maze that had these holes, but they couldn't fall in. And so you had to literally like tip it on one side or another. So I always tell people that has been and continues to be my faith journey is that I'm just the ball rolling. I don't know the holes that are in front of me. I may see the holes in front of me, but I'm still going to roll because I trust that whatever energy of love that's governing my life is going to tip this tip the level to prevent me from falling into that hole. Sometimes you just have to do things and you don't have to understand everything. You don't have to figure anything out. There's never a perfect time. The perfect time is the current time. It's scary. It is so uncertain. But had I not just taken that step and the other step and the next right step, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Oh, oh, Rob, I just can't thank you enough. There's something so powerful about the arc of your story to come from the place of trauma. It originated all the way through. Here's where now there is acceptance, there is tenderness, there is care for yourself, and you're finding it with others. I think that the journey so many of us are on is we are not here to have to do this by ourselves, that there is such healing that can be found in community. But to Rihanna's point, my goodness, it's not every community. Our deep need for community can lead us into very difficult places. But when we are able to find the connections that make us more fully who we are and welcome us and all of that, it just seems like such a precious, precious thing for us humans. We need that. We need it. Thank you.
Yeah, the importance of community is what it's the underlying thread in my whole journey in life
Yeah.
because there's always a talk and I stand firm in living authentic lives, in living in your authenticity. But what happens when you don't have an identity to lean on? Like you don't have
Yeah.
it. How do you live authentically from nothing? I needed to be in community. I needed to see healthy variations of a community that accepted me in my own diverse levels so that I can start as children do, right? They mimic. Oh, is that who I am? Or is this person more who I am? Or I like that too, and you like that too, and this is great. I was a child again and I was looking at the world through the eyes of a child, and everything was awesome. Everything was a wonder. And I needed to understand my community in order for me to understand myself because there was a really fine line that I would go back to the familiar way of mimicking other identities. But it had to be very present and understanding like this is my community, but I can develop who I am. I can have a faith as well and develop my own separate identity. Because as Rihanna mentioned, what kept me searching is that inner child that really loved a faith, that really loved spirituality and community.
Yeah.
It was just like I was trying to find it. And when I did, I was able to be like who I am, and I'm still figuring things out. But now I'm in a place where I'm safe. And like you mentioned, Ashley, and I love that you said it, it wasn't that I was saved, it was that I was safe.
Yeah.
Just different.
I love your phrasing of, I think it's what you call your spiritual direction practice is from wounding to wisdom. When we
Yeah.
go from our wounding into wisdom, then our story becomes something that helps others connect as well, right? Because they can understand that their wounds can become wisdom as well.
Yeah. I needed to reflect the fact that to get away from that language of your you can have you can have wounds, right? And they can be completely covered if you come to whatever faith, right? Whatever community is going to wipe it away. And that you can't trust your own instincts because you have a carnal mind and it's tainted by sin and everything like that. So you can't think for yourself. So for wounds to still be present, it's like I want my scars. I want to see my scars. I want to see the wounds because they are healed. These are badges of honor. And again, that's my reflection of my journey. There are others that don't feel comfortable with that, and I honor their journey too. And the wisdom part of it is like, yeah, I've been through some stuff and I learned some stuff. So they're wisdom to me. I'm not gonna do that again. I learned, and I can trust my instinct and my mind. I want in my spiritual direction ministry to emulate that and let others know that you can survive. You are an individual, and you can be met wherever you are if that's what makes you feel whole.
Oh, what a Rob, thank you so much. This has just been such an honor to hear your journey. And as I mentioned, you were just, for so many of us in these current times, it is just a very, very difficult journey. So thank you for sharing yourself so that others can find a way through as well. I just thank you so much. And would you mind? We usually end our episodes with a little segment that we call A Step from Here. This is a segment that is like a little something we can take with us this next week and build connection with others and care for ourselves, care for each other in our daily lives. Is there something that you would leave us with in our last segment?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Some people in different faith communities that have experienced toxic theology or anything like that have always been told that we needed to be servants to others. Like we are here to serve others. And I want to remind people that of if we want to go into Christian Bible, the Bible, there's a scripture in Bible that says, love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. And so you cannot love anyone else until you love yourself. So, whereas others say we are to be of service to others, I want people to really understand that you need to be of service to yourself first so that you can be of service to others. So, don't forget your own self care.
Oh, what a gift. Thank you. Thank you. We will be carrying you and your story and the reminder to care for ourselves in these next weeks. Thank you, Rob. Thank you for who you are and all you do in the world. And it is just an honor to have been with you today.
It was so
Thank,
much fun. Thank you so much. I really love this.
thank you for being here, Rob. So good to be with you.
Wonderful. Thank you,
Thank
listeners, for
you.
being with us. And we will look forward and we will connect again soon. Bye bye.